This is an interesting facet of our Sabbath observance. Before I became an Adventist, that would sound strange to me where that came from, but of course when you read how it all started, it makes very easy sense, more sense. In recognizing sunset to sunset, we're actually recognizing the original creation and the Sabbath. If we were trying to observe the Sabbath from midnight to midnight, we'd just be missing out on what the purpose of remembering this day and when it was instituted. And we know that God did not need to rest from His creating at the beginning. He knew that we would need the rest. And also to be refreshed from everything that's going on in the world. And this is emphasized in Mark 2:27. Turn there real fast. Mark 2:27. And he said unto them, the Sabbath was made for man, and not man for the Sabbath. It's also the reason why the fourth commandment starts out with remember. Now, we know this text very well, or we should. But let's turn there anyway. Exodus chapter 20. These verses, actually. Exodus chapter 20, 8 through 11. God says to remember, so I think the more we read over it, the better we remember it. As much as we think we can remember something, sometimes we take it for granted and our minds don't actually remember exactly what it is. Exodus chapter 20, verses 8 through 11. There's the word. Remember. Remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. 6 days shalt thou labor and do all thy work. But the seventh day is But the seventh day is the Sabbath of the Lord thy God. In it thou shalt not do any work, thou, nor thy son, nor thy daughter, thy manservant, nor thy maidservant, nor thy cattle, nor thy stranger that is within thy gates. For in 6 days the Lord made heaven and earth, the sea, and all that in them is, and rested the Sabbath day. Wherefore the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and hallowed it. God knew some, if not all, would forget. That's why the commandments remember. I emphasize that. As the pastor spoke of last week, it is a time of rest and refreshing. And the Hebrew word for Sabbath literally means rest or interruption, cessation or to cease or desist. And most of you have been through a Revelation seminar and have heard the breakdown of this commandment many times, I'm sure. Some people will end up getting hung up on what we don't do on Sabbath. I think we need to spend more time discussing and looking into what we should be doing on Sabbath. Don't keep on the negative, keep on the positive. Sabbath is not about sleeping the day away. Yes, we should rest. Taking a little nap is more than acceptable. It's part of it. I don't say that to mean we should be breaking the commandment, going shopping or going out to eat or going to a ball game of any sort or any other selfish pleasure for that matter. But I believe we need to spend more time digging into what we should be doing. The Sabbath is, the other part of it is we're to rest from our normal daily toil, if you will. The law forbids secular labor on the rest day of the Lord. The toil that gains a livelihood must cease. No labor for worldly pleasure or profit is lawful upon that day. But as God ceased his labor of creating and rested upon the Sabbath and blessed it, so man is to lead the occupations of his daily life and devote those sacred hours to healthful rest, to worship, and to holy deeds. That is Page 207, The Desire of Ages. This does not mean we need to cease from spending time from God, but with God. Each Sabbath observer should seek the presence and communion with God in worship, both in quiet meditation and in public worship. That's why we're here today, right? We see in Mark 6, verse 2, "And when the Sabbath day was come, he began to teach in the synagogue. And many hearing him were astonished, saying, From whence hath this man these things? And what wisdom is this which is given unto him, that even such mighty works are wrought by his hands?" Or the familiar text of many, Luke 4:16. We want to turn there, even though it's familiar to us. Luke 4:16. Let's make sure we know it. Luke 4:16 says, "And he came to Nazareth, where he had been brought up. And, as his custom was, he went into the synagogue on the Sabbath day and stood up for to read." So this shows the importance of coming together to worship God and study